a few memes or videos in the vast sea of political commentary is not going to make much of a difference in this election, nor has it in past elections as well. What did make a difference in the last election is the lies about Hunter Biden's laptop that more than 4 dozen former intelligence officials lied about in the middle of that campaign. And most networks, to include this one, bought that lie hook, line, and sinker. That did make a difference in the election. But I think a few videos or commentaries, which, again, you shouldn't do if you're out there in the business of commentating on elections, is not going to make a difference in the vast sea of commentary we see.
That's Republican Senator Tom Cotton shutting down CNN political hack Dana Bash for fear-mongering about Russian collusion again. Welcome to Nerk News, I'm Nerkish, and it looks like establishment media is playing its greatest hits now that we're deep in election season. Here's Tom Cotton calmly dismantling every single one of these Democrat talking points on live television.
How worried are you that right-wing influencers, people who do have an impact on your constituents, are being funded either directly or indirectly by the Russian government in order to make an impact on this election?
Using money to try to promote memes or videos on the internet is not exactly going to make a huge difference. Again, you shouldn't knowingly do that. I don't know if any of these people knowingly did it.
Do you know young people who some people only get their information from those memes and videos?
But Dana, what would be catastrophic is if a foreign government, say, hacked into the voter registration system during voting, or hacked into election machines and erased votes, or turned off the electricity in a big city on election day. Those are things that are serious threats. A few videos and memes.
Are those active threats? Are you? Is that
I am worried about those kind of threats, sure.
Is that based on what you're being briefed on?
It's based on the vulnerabilities that all of our infrastructure around the country has. That worries me a lot more than a few videos or memes.
It sounds to me like you're downplaying the fact that Vladimir Putin is using people like Dave Rubin, whose show you went on in February, as a tool for his propaganda.
So I'm not downplaying Vladimir Putin's designs or Xi Jinping's designs or the Ayatollah's designs to try to influence our election.
Call me crazy, but I think the bigger problem here is that pretend journalists have blown their credibility so much that there's apparently an entire cohort of young people exclusively getting their information from memes. Which, by the way, CNN didn't seem to care too much about when they were schizo edits of Kamala Harris saying she's brat, or influencers paid by Democrats to lie and shill for them. I mean, if you really want to talk about foreign influence in America, maybe look at the reports suggesting financial relationships between China and places like the New York Times, Washington Post, and Wall Street Journal. Or I don't know, maybe look at Chinese money flooding the American education system.
One of the most conservative Republicans alive today. It's really remarkable that he endorsed a Democrat. What does that tell you about Donald Trump?
Endorsements are not going to make the difference in this race. What's going to make the difference is their records. This is a very unusual presidential election. We have a former president running for office, first time in more than 100 years. People remember that when Donald Trump was in office, prices were low, wages were high, we had peace and stability around the world. Kamala Harris, as vice president, has brought us record high inflation. We have a wide open southern border, and we have war everywhere you turn around the world. So I know that endorsements sometimes make news, but most Americans are going to be making their decisions based on the records of these two candidates. People remember that we had good times with Donald Trump. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have brought us very bad times.
Dick Cheney was vice president of the United States for 8 years. He was a senior member of the House. He was chief of staff to Gerald Ford. He worked tirelessly to advance Republican policies for a long time. You don't think his endorsement of a Democrat with that kind of pedigree is going to make a difference with swing voters?
I really don't.
Or never Trump voters who weren't sure about Harris?
Well, I mean, some of this is probably that Donald Trump beat his daughter in her last election by 39 points.
You know, I think the bigger question here is, what does Cheney's endorsement say about Kamala Harris? I mean, we can already imagine why a uniparty pro-war DC insider with a daughter who, let's say, has had some issues with Trump in the past wouldn't be the biggest fan of him this election. But it is a little funny to see how quick CNN was to dismiss endorsements for Trump from RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, but suddenly they matter because Cheney will somehow swing never-Trumpers to voting for Kamala Harris, as if the name wasn't self-evident enough.
Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance said after the shooting, quote, "I don't like that this is a fact of life," adding, "We don't have to like the reality that we live in, but it is the reality we live in." Do you accept that school shootings like this are just a way of life now?
No, absolutely not. And J.D. Vance doesn't either. He said that he doesn't want them to be a fact of life. And this week, the Associated Press got caught distorting that quote from him so bad that they had to retract it. But here's what we also know about that shooting, even as we're still gathering all the facts. It wasn't as bad as it might have been because there was a police officer on the school premises that was able to neutralize the shooter. Kamala Harris wants to take police officers out of school. She said it in the past. That's her position. It's not surprising because she's consistently taken positions against law enforcement throughout her career as a San Francisco liberal. If that police officer hadn't been there, if Kamala Harris had gotten her way, many more students and teachers might have been killed.
But the fact that there are mental health problems, and we don't know exactly what was going on with this 14-year-old, 14, but there are mental health problems all across the world right now. It's bad. The difference between other countries and this country is that it is being expressed with gun violence. Is it not time to figure out a way to mitigate that part of the equation when it is affecting our children so often?
Well, I think one way to mitigate that is to enforce the laws we have on the books. Donald Trump did that. We had a severe crackdown on criminals using guns. Since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have taken office, they have deprioritized that. They haven't focused on enforcing the laws that we have on the book. They focus on trying to take guns away from law-abiding citizens.
Bash is equivocating here a bit. Mental health is a problem in Western nations, and particularly the US, where there's an increased obsession with overdiagnosing and overmedicating people struggling with the failures of social Marxism and liberal policies pushed by the media. I mean, what are people honestly supposed to be optimistic about when they don't share a cultural identity with their neighbors, and nearly every aspect of the American dream is out of reach for them because the government keeps leveraging their futures for short-term gain? And by the way, wasn't it liberals who told us that if we increased acceptance and obsessed over mental health nonstop, that things would get better? Yet we appear to be in the middle of a mental health crisis with deaths of despair on the rise. And worst of all, they're telling us to give them more control to fix the problems they've created. But let me know what you think. How did Tom Cotton handle himself in the interview? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That stuff really does help us out. Until then, this has been Nerk News. Thanks for watching. Bye!